We shouldn't be that surprised that people being pissed off about this pageant going on at the White House is going to get entertainers to back out because they're getting the pressure. They're thinking about their constituency and their next gigs and who buys their music. But is that the right way to flex on this? What do you think of it?
Well, it's somewhat the right way. I think another strategy that could be employed is that you've got to start making the people who support him suffer. In other words, these are the elected officials, these are the administrative officials that are working under his umbrella. Some of the things, you've got to make life uncomfortable for the narcissism, is what I'm saying. You know, some of the things that he does, whether you like it or not, from a policy perspective, if you care about the economy, if you care about inflation, if you care about the borders, if you care about health care, if you care about these kind of things, you can judge folks accordingly. And there's the right and there's the left, and obviously they're tussling back and forth, but that's the American way. What he has done is completely disrupt the system because of the way in which he wants to do things. When you talk about him putting his face on a $250 bill, when you talk about the grifting that he's engaged in, where he's alleged to have pocketed, whether it's for him, his cronies, his family, etc., in excess of over $4 billion. You know good and damn well nobody else would have got away with that. You know damn well Barack Obama wouldn't have gotten away with that. A lot of the things that he's doing. And so what I've been doing is when I've talked to an abundance of conservatives, rather than sit up there and engage in name calling, engaging in histrionics and being petty and calling them names like that's going to accomplish something, which it's not. What I do is try to impart upon them this reality. Once upon a time as conservatives in this country, you paid a lot of attention to precedent. You pointed out about our American system and what it was supposed to be. And what you said was there are things that we shouldn't allow because if you allow them now, you're going to have to relent to allowing them later. And all of that has gone out of the window when it comes to Trump. It could be the ballroom. It could be the $250 bill. It could be trips across the Middle East. It could be wars that wasn't wars that ended up being wars. It could be we're reaching a conclusion and we're about to reach an agreement and then bombs dropping just hours later. It could be a whole bunch of things rife with inconsistency that could easily be interpreted as being disingenuous or if not flat out lying. Who gets away with that? The answer usually was no one. In politics. Now, this man, there's an exception that's been made for him. And it's been co-signed by people in office who are afraid to lose their jobs, that they're not doing their jobs. Maybe it's because of what happened in Indiana, maybe Louisiana, or with Massey, guys that he targeted, that he got rid of, that he made sure, Ken Paxton in Texas over John Cornyn, who voted with him a lot of times. You're not taking into account, meaning them, that by allowing this, you're in no position to talk to anybody on the left if and when they regain power because of the blind eye and the proverbial deaf ear that you turned, and you went against the American way, the American system. In some instances, I wouldn't say constitutional violations because I don't think he's gone that far in most people's eyes anyway. But the stuff that they've allowed him to get away with, it's going to come back to bite them because you never allowed it before. You abhorred it. And now you're guilty of doing it, and you're not going to be able to erase that stain that's on your body.
Here's the counter. The American voters, specifically the American media, are goldfish, and they will forget this. We will agree that Trump was the problem, but he was elected by the people, so we had to work with him, and a lot of his policies were conservative policies, and I didn't say what he said, and I never said what he said. I said, here, I'll show you the quote where I said that I don't like some of the things he says, and I wouldn't have said it that way. And I'm a real Christian conservative, and character counts. And we're going to get back to that now. The Trump era is over. I don't want to talk about the past. That's what they think will get them past it, and I think they are in. Well, what do you think?
I'm going to say something, and I want to make sure I'm very responsible. I'm not wishing this on him or any other human being. But that works if he passes away. It doesn't work if he's alive. And the reason why is because if he's alive, he's giving you every indication he's not going away. He doesn't have to be in office to stay relevant and to stay potent and to make sure that he has his foot on the proverbial necks of the GOP, whoever they may be. Because by him endorsing Paxton at the 11th hour, it really gave him an opportunity to flex his muscle and to sort of reel people in line. Go against me, and there's a price that you're going to pay because I could get you up out of there. If he could do it as president, he can certainly do it when he's departing office because he still maintains a significant level of clout that they can't escape from. That fear is going to prevent them from saying those things. And as a result of them not saying those things, they're going to look every bit as complicit as most of us believe them to be. And because they're not him, meaning they're not the ones running for office, he's not the one running for office, they are. They don't have his cachet. It'll be completely at his mercy. And if you sever ties with him, you're on your own, and you're not going to have the kind of cachet that he's had with the MAGA following. That's the issue. And that's why I said I'm not wishing or anything vile or evil or anything. I'm not that dude. I'm just simply pointing out that as long as he's alive and talking, he is going to open his mouth. Remember, Chris, to your audience, I've known this man for decades. I hadn't spoken to him really other than your show since he ran for president. But prior to that, we spoke often. His casinos, the fights that he would have, the events that he would throw, his appearances at sporting events. I knew this man. I'm telling you what I know. He's not going to shut up. One of his primary assistants told me in 2014, you have people who are addicted to crack. You have people who are addicted to cocaine and alcohol. His addiction, the camera and the microphone. That's who he is. He is not going away until he's gone away.
Who do you want, the Thunder or San Antonio for the Knicks?
Wow, that's a tough one because Oklahoma City has the experience. They've got size, they've got athleticism, they've got shooters, they've got about 7 different guards they can throw at you, and that's a lot. But San Antonio's got this 7'5" alien from France known as Victor Wembanyama, who is the real deal. And they've got a bunch of rough riders themselves who are young thoroughbreds with nothing to lose. They're 22 years of age and under, just young and coming at you all the time and not scared of anything. Good enough to push this to a 7-game series. But if I had to pick, I would say San Antonio, despite Victor Wembanyama and his 7'5" frame, because the brilliance of Jalen Brunson and that of Karl Anthony Towns, I think that the youth of San Antonio could ultimately work against them going up against an experienced, savvy team like the New York Knicks. I would have to say San Antonio, but it's trepidation with both because those two teams have been the best 2 teams in basketball all season long, not the New York Knicks.
And look,
and they will be the favorites.
Thunder's the reigning champs. Absolutely. Thunder's reigning champs. They're only better this year, in my opinion. They seem so much more poised in for every kind of situation. But they got pushed to 7 here, so we'll see what happens. Let me ask you something. You're not old enough to remember this, but from your study of it, do you think Victor Wembanyama is the closest thing in our lifetime to watching Wilt Chamberlain when he first came in the league?
You could say that defensively because he was such a huge, huge figure and he stood so high above the crowd because of his height. You can use it in that level. Wilt Chamberlain was more of an offensive player and a rebounder, wasn't as committed defensively as Victor Wembanyama is, but the impact is undeniable. But I'll do you one better. I'll bring it home to you. Victor Wembanyama, to me, is a 7'5" version of Kevin Durant. And we all know how great Kevin Durant is. Kevin Durant, 7 feet, with a handle, with a J, with a 3-point shot, who can put the ball on the floor, get to the free throw line, and score. Victor Wembanyama is a lesser version of those things at the moment. As his game continues to evolve offensively, he has that kind of potential. And his defensive potential, his ability to defend in the interior because of his length, not to mention his ability to get out on perimeter shooters, makes him on the verge of being the greatest defensive player the NBA has ever seen.
And to think, I thought we maxed out with Ralph Sampson at that length, and now this kid can jump up and kick
Ralph
the rim.
Sampson wasn't
he
this.
can literally kick the rim. Amazing what we're seeing physically. But we'll be watching. I appreciate your analysis on all things at all times, my brother. I wish you a good weekend. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.